But
I love that idea. That's brilliant. Big behemoths like the Royal Mail and things like that. NHS.
Cobots and robots and digital twins.
Sorry,
and
cobots.
Cobots, which is what he's talking about there, having something that assists the human. Half an hour.
TikTok. You
TikTok,
inundate me
YouTube,
with TikTok. Oh my days. It's as much as you look at some of our vendors. They're not based in London. They're not based in Manchester or Leeds or Birmingham. They're based on mainland Europe.
Order, and it has to go to a certain department, then goes to another department, then someone else has to approve it, and then it goes somewhere else to approve. You're thinking, hang on, it should have taken 2 weeks to approve something. So obviously we know that the main companies that do it really well. I mean, the Monzo banks are flying because of it. It's really good. Amazon's flying because they've got it nailed, but the other legacy companies are just falling by the wayside.
The next 5-10 years, from an economic perspective, are going to be pretty tough.
I'm Steve Motley. Today, I've had a really good conversation with Neil and John. We've been talking about what the next 10 years looks like in terms of work. And we talked about a few things that could happen. Could there be a day in the not too distant future where we all have our own personal virtual assistant in the form of a robot? Or could we be working with a global network of people that we pick up and put down as and when we need them, and we then rate them based on their capability and attitude? Or are we going to burn ourselves out over the next 10 years? Because we're always on these things. We're always connected to work one way or another. And actually, what can we do to stop that happening? So, I hope you enjoy what I've got to say. I hope you learn a lot. And welcome to Tomorrow's Workplace Today. Right, so
What have you got for us, Steve?
Today, what I've got for you is I like my Gartner. I read a lot about Gartner.
Yeah.
I was reading an article the other day. So 6 ways the workplace will change in the next 10 years.
Right.
So I thought I would give you some of I'll talk through the 6.
Okay.
I just wanted to get your guys' opinion on whether you're seeing that happening today or not in your experience.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Sounds good.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so number 1, we working will eliminate middle management. I feel like I'm going to...
As in Nintendo Wii?
No, let me explain it. I'm going to have to explain this, aren't I?
Yeah.
So if I summarise what they're saying, it's less traditional hierarchy. Okay. It's more small, autonomous, cross-functional teams working together to solve business problems and achieve outcomes. Okay. So we working together as small cross-functional teams.
Okay.
What do you reckon? Is that are you seeing that? You're out talking to businesses every day. Is that the sort of thing that you're seeing or not?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not on the people I'm talking to and the customers that I have. I'm not seeing it. I mean, we're getting close to that, aren't we? Ourselves.
Yeah. I thought if you'd pick up on that, good. Yeah. Tick. Well done.
Thank you. I have noticed that's what's going on. I'm not quite as stupid as I look. But I think going forward, you look at one of my favourite things like sport. You have special teams, don't you? You have all these different people come in to build the collective to deliver the end result, and ultimately that's what we're looking at, isn't it?
Yeah.
A small team that has all the different skill sets that you need to deliver the end desired result. And like I said, we're moving in that direction. But as yet, I haven't massively seen it.
Okay.
Being honest.
So just to explain that to the listeners then, who aren't familiar with us, so we work in scrum teams, small cross-functional teams that work on projects to deliver them end to end. So that's what John's referring to. But potentially we're an anomaly then. So same question to you then, Neil. Are you seeing similar stuff or not?
I guess the only context I've got is I've spoken to a couple of businesses that have been acquired by big PLCs, and some of them have been sort of absorbed and systems and processes have been enforced upon them. Others, they've been kind of left to learn to be a bit more autonomous, to operate as a small sort of business unit, if they're profitable or not. And then the PLC or the organisation above them is kind of trying to facilitate certain things and give them systems and processes if it's going to benefit or not. Although the feedback that I've got off a couple of them is that they've gone down this particular route of trying to, the whole shared service thing or something like that, and it's not particularly worked very well. Or their analogy was it was a bit horrendous and it was a bit of a car crash because the little nuances in the little different ways of working, like different normal codes for different suppliers and all that type of stuff. But you're right. I think that's the only thing I've seen so far. It's more through acquisition in terms of growth and the fact that they've been left to run as their own small sort of business unit. But you're right. I think in terms of getting rid of, talk about that sort of middle management layer, don't they? There sort of seem to be that hierarchical structure.
Yeah.
If you can actually have, more functional teams that will actually be more effective as opposed to managing to a manager to a manager to another manager, and it keeps layering it up. I think see how that can work.
I think that's an important point, isn't it? If that does happen, I think it is happening. I think it will happen more and more. I think the way that the job of a middle manager changes significantly from 10, 20 years ago. Because what's the role of a middle manager if you've got rid of that traditional hierarchy and you're more small autonomous pods of people working together to achieve an outcome? What's that mean to a middle manager?
Yeah, the benefits are huge, aren't they?
Yeah,
the efficiencies that in any area, be it technology, be it in whatever walk of business or life, having like you said, the small pods, those teams that actually are just going to deliver value rather than, you only got to look at big behemoths like the Royal Mail and things like that. NHS, they don't mind a tiered level of of management, and we all experience how inefficient and sort of ungainly that becomes. It's the Royal Mail, I think, was it the Royal Mail? I think it was the Royal Mail that sort of announced that they were taking tiers of management out. You can only think that they're moving to having that more direct, focused approach to delivering end results.
I've seen it from a supply chain perspective, even things like when you place an order and it has to go to a certain department, then goes to another department, and someone else has to approve it, and then it goes somewhere else to approve. And you're thinking, hang on, it should have taken 2 weeks to approve something. And it's the idea, hopefully, is to sort of try and streamline it and just try and speed the process and ultimately get to that desired outcome faster. Yeah,
it's about removing waste, isn't it? When you've got a process which involves multiple teams and there's handoffs between multiple teams, there's often a waiting time in between and stuff falls through the gaps. So if you remove the handoff, if you create these little pods that can work together and deliver something end to end, you don't have that handoff, you don't have the waiting time, and you don't have stuff falling between the gaps.
So on that, Steve, then, obviously, when you introduced Agile and the Agile methodology to us and working in scrums and things like that. So do you see that becoming more prominent and prevalent in not just delivering solutions, but in just the way businesses
definitely. I think
organizations work?
Scrum started with software 20 years ago, but I think we've already seen outside of the world of IT, Agile and Scrum being used in different areas. Marketing, for example, it's used quite commonly now. Anywhere where you've got an end-to-end process where you've got handoffs between multiple teams, I would encourage every business to look at, can you bring that together into one autonomous team and give them ownership of that process.
It's a bit like I'm stepping away from technology here, but it's a bit like the move in construction to modular building and sort of having those teams that are building a pod and then having a plumber to come in and put the first fix in, and plumber to put an electrician to come in and do first fix of, and ultimately is then going to be able to in the next decade you'd think where things could be quite interesting. It brings that efficiency and that speed to say, do you know what, we've got this plot of land in the centre of London, just as for argument's sake, and we're just going to lorry down all these different, so when, in the area that we're in, modular buildings quite, prominent, and they're doing lots of things in the public sector, and they're being able to say, do you know what, we're not going to disrupt your hospital landscape or your estate, we'll just be able to go, right, here's our sort of canvas, for want of a better description, and we're just going to build up, and it will be, really, really quite quick. And, one of my, actually thinking about it and talking aloud, one of my clients has a thing where they're helping modular building companies with, basically meaning you don't necessarily have to have loads and loads of electricians on site. Apologies to any electricians listening, not many probably.
I think they're busy enough.
Yeah, I think so.
My experience
it is where it can be, it's plug and play. So, they're building things, and that's, so that's in construction. We were talking about technology. I guess it's going to be.
Yeah, does it say in the report which sectors it's going to be? Does it give a bit of an insight on it?
I think it talks about all sectors. I think it kind of talks about large organisations, big projects, difficult to get them landed. Yeah, looking at turning it on its head and moving away from that traditional structure. So no particular sectors. I think construction's a really interesting one. I think we're going to see a massive change, already are seeing a massive change in that sector, based on those kind of lean principles that we work to, which is leading to stuff like modular building, where you're bringing that to site on a just-in-time basis, that you're assembling it and you're off-site quickly. I think that's a game changer.
Yeah.
Okay, right, what's the next one? I'm lost. Here we go. So, constant upskilling and digital dexterity will outweigh tenure and experience. So the youth is taking over, unfortunately.
Yeah, thanks.
JB.
I'll get my coat.
So yeah, if I summarise, we're no longer putting as much kind of weight on 10, 15 years experience in the business and they're the go-to. Actually, it's more, can people keep up to date with technology and with digital skills and adapt and evolve? And that's more valuable in a workplace.
Well, exactly. I was going to just speak personally. It's like, bedtime reading just to stay in my job, just to keep because technology is moving so fast, and trying to keep up with with the trends in the technology, but also in what people are wanting to do to progress, not only their career but in how things operate. Am I seeing that? Yes, probably actually. Certainly, a lot of the businesses that I'm talking to, you would, I'm not being ageist, even though you're seeing a lot younger sort of, employee, roster, if you like, and the people that you're talking to, they're, extremely knowledgeable, and they're they're challenging you kind of, your reasons as to why that's a good solution and that's going to do it this way. And it's like, well, why is that? And, and where, like you said, maybe a decade ago or 15 years ago, it'd be like, well, you've been in the game quite a long time, I'll take it as read. Now it's like, actually, I'll challenge you and I'll ask you why.
Yes, digital native, I think, is a good phrase. Wow. The next generation.
All the terms you have.
Yeah, well, I read too much Gartner, obviously, but the next generation that's coming through, they're digital natives. They've grown up in a digital world. It's just what they're used to, I think.
And I suppose also it's, like you said, the digital dexterity and how quickly they can absorb the information and actually put it into practice. They don't have to go on a 3-year course anymore. It could be a 6-week course. It could be an hour-long webinar. It could be a YouTube clip to figure out how to fix something, and then they're straight in and they're at the tools and they're fixing it. I would argue that there is certain people out there that can do both, like a bit of a holy grail to have someone that's got 15, 20, 30 years experience and also keeps up with the times. So,
is that you?
Not necessarily me. I was thinking more some of the consultants that we've got that are, they've got the great business acumen. They can talk the game. They can obviously, they've got the experience, but then, bedtime reading, they are up to speed as well, and they know all the right words to say, but then they can back it up with that experience as well. So I think because we've experienced the flip side as well, so you can get someone that's, I suppose, fresh out of university or they've done a course, but then they don't have the real world experience. But if you marry the two together and you have a team that's got a bit of a blend of both, then I find that the youngsters are obviously absorbing that information very quickly and then putting it. The key is obviously with any information is to take it in, but then put it into practice, and then it cements it, and obviously then becomes real.
It's a great point, actually. Great point. Because experience is critical, isn't it? And it really, people that have been there 15 years will know a lot about the business, the industry, the stuff that's specific to them. But it is about that dexterity. It's about can people keep up with what's happening in terms of technology as well?
Yeah, actually, while Neil was talking, I'm thinking, we were talking about in our last pod around what's happening in 30 years' time, and I'll just go back to what my son, in 1 minute he's got his PC on, he's got his phone, and he's got his iPad all at the same time, consuming different things, and he's flicking around. And you were saying about digital native, I'm thinking, well, that's a term I've not really come across, but actually he's 11 and that's his life. And, while he's luckily still likes, hardback books and things like that, actually he's consuming 3 different things nigh on at the same time, social media, a game, and the news or whatever. Needs to get out a bit more, I appreciate.
But and again, it doesn't even necessarily, I mean, my brother's 6 years younger than me, so he's 33, 34, and I remember coming back from travelling, and he used to have MSN on, he used to have his PlayStation going, and he had Football Manager going, and he had his phone. I'm thinking, what's going on? But you're right, and then again, he's still the same now. Just the way that they can, and you say multitasking isn't great for the brain, but they can hone in on a specific thing, like you say, it could be a game or whatever, but then they're talking to someone on the headset, and then they've got comments or whatever, and they're doing a commentary, and then they're recording themselves on a live stream, and you're like, what the hell? But you're right, they've grown up with technology more or less around. I mean, my son can barely string a sentence together, but he's there on his iPad, on YouTube Kids and all the rest of it. He knows how to, and again, Apple's obviously got a lot to play for the whole swiping, and so it's a muscle memory now. He knows how to swipe and pinch and zoom and all that type of stuff, that intuitive way of using technology. Whereas if you just give a phone to a, 80, 90-year-old that never touched it before, they're a bit like, what the hell do I do with this type thing. So but you're right. I think it's going to benefit businesses. I think the ones that don't, it's a bit that whole dinosaur effect that they'll soon go extinct. They'll soon, business will, you can't be in business and be successful without adopting certain things. Otherwise, it just, the real world.
We see it, don't we, when we're delivering projects?
100%, yeah.
There are challenges sometimes when users struggle to adapt to new technology, and
I think the whole chain management piece is a big thing, to be honest. And especially when we're going from a very paper traditional process to a very digital process, sometimes that gap can and it is a skill set to manage that process, that transition between one and the other. Because you're right, there'll be the younger generation that will think, thank God, this is brilliant. And then others are a bit like, oh, hang on, I don't know what to do, and I'm scared of pressing this button because it might disappear, and then what? But you're right, it's we do experience it day to day.
I think it also links in, for me, another theme I'm picking up, kind of related around digital skills in general. I think there's the demand. If you go and speak to businesses, the demand for digital skills is just going up and up, and the marketplace is just red hot. It's very difficult to find that talent at the minute.
I'll be intrigued if we speak to the educational establishments, whether they're actually getting the influx of people subscribing to courses that ultimately, because as employers, we should be communicating that this is the skills gap. Hopefully, we can start plugging it. Or, again, like we said, do they necessarily need to go on a 3-year college degree? Can they do a specific, business intelligence program block of work? You can do loads of stuff online. They could quite easily, there'll be loads of digital programs. I think one of my friends did some on the IBM sort of site, and it was just free, but ultimately it came out with a bit of a qualification on data integration pieces, and it's a skill set at the end of the day that's okay. Yes, I think it was a 6-week course or something like that, but you can keep layering them on top of each other and ultimately build up a bit of a bank that ultimately becomes valuable in a particular area.
That's a challenge in itself. We know, technology moves fast. You need to keep. We've just talked about the fact you need to keep up to date with technology, but everybody's really busy. We're really busy. We've got a load of projects we need to deliver. How do you create the capacity to allow the team to actually keep up to date with learning? And tell me, how do we do that?
It's a great question, and I suppose that there's two things for me, because you can go a bit old school and say, well, hang on, you've got evenings and weekends, but and we've done it recently. We did an advanced sort of sales, solution selling sort of coursework, but again, old school. Are we going to do that in our 9 to 5, where that's prime selling time, or should we do it on an evening and a weekend? I did it on an evening and weekend, but yeah, the younger generation now, do they expect to do it in between the 9 to 5? I don't know. Is it a bit of a blend of both? Do we need to sort of give and take? I think we probably do. I think there needs to be sort of, yes, okay, we can allow you to come in, I don't know, half an hour, we'll spend the first hour of the day upskilling, and then we expect you to at least read some trade associated type stuff on a night, or do a particular course, and a lot of it is delivered in bite-sized chunks now. They're half an hour, they're an hour long. So again, it's not like an open university 5-year type length program. A lot of them are quite sort of
bite-sized chunks.
I'm going to show my age now.
Go on.
Love doing that. But so picking up on your point, I think. Well, picking up both your points, actually, I think it's a challenge for people in technology to stay up to date and even sometimes get ahead of the curve. I think it's a challenge for employers to make sure that their staff are up to date. And because ultimately, in what we do, we have customers that are relying on us to go to them and say, best practice is this. But how can you offer that advice if you haven't got the time to get to that point? And I think for me, it's kind of like, we need to rely and push back on our vendors to help us to be able to enable us to do that. And I think that really where I was coming and showing my age, because so far in that statement I haven't, but where I'm going to show my age is, do you know what? That everyone's, under an element of pressure, in what they do or what they have to do. And we go back 20 years, you're not necessarily in front of a screen all day. But what you were suggesting, and I get it, is that, for 7.5, 8 hours a day, you're in front and you're delivering something in our business's case. And then you're kind of saying, and actually when you get home, once you've, put some fuel inside you, actually keep looking at a screen close up, and there's got, this is the age bit. That's the bit. It's like sometimes you just want to be able to sit back and watch Liverpool beat Chelsea.
Yeah,
thought I'd get that in.
Love that one. Love that little thing. You're right. I do find there's certain times where on a night I don't want to stare at.
No, you don't. You're the worst. No, I'm not having that. You talk to me at about 10:30 at night, and you're like, I've just read this. Look at this, and I'm thinking, I'm watching the football. Just watch the football.
Yeah, and that is that. You're right.
Don't paint yourself to be this saint.
No, but I probably do myself a disservice, because there's times where my eyes, I think I probably need glasses or something at some point, where I'm thinking, I need to stop looking at a screen. But then the irony is I go downstairs and watch the TV, I'm thinking, I'm still looking at a bloody screen. So I might go for a walk or do something, because it's, you're right. And I have found, I've signed up to courses to do certain things on a night, and you're right, even when they are half an hour or sort of an hour long, I think to myself, do I really want to be sort of, I suppose, it's the concentration piece for me. If you've just been at it all day for 8 to 10 hours or whatever, see what I did there?
I was thinking more 5 to 6 for you.
3 to 4, yeah. But
when you're reading,
going over on a night and then watching or reading and actually concentrating on the content. The irony is, but you're right, I've started watching loads more like YouTube, and there might be a half an hour.
You
TikTok,
inundate me with TikTok. Oh my days!
But again, I get my content from different sources. But I'll do it for educational purposes. But they do entertain me as well. So there's a bit of so there's a bit of a balance. But you're right in terms of the actual. Going back on topic, shall we? But
You
I
can't
think
remember
it
what
is
the topic was.
I was going
the
to say,
topic is about dexterity and
Well,
actually
yeah, I'm just looking for help. You know, how do we do it? How do we do it? I think ultimately you've got to build Slack into your system, haven't you? You've got to allow that investment in learning and R&D and innovation, whatever you want to call it. You've got to build some Slack into the system to accommodate that, and you've got to do it in bite-sized chunks. And we've started doing stuff like lunch and learn to try and make that as
quite a
efficient
lot
as
of
possible.
industries. There's that continued professional development thing. Like when I was in the fitness game, you had to hit certain points, and I think legal and also like accountancy, they've got to do that as well. And I think it's good because it's that sort of mindset, forever learning, like always learning something new, and you can't. And especially the industry you're in, it just moves so quickly.
go on, sorry.
Have you guys come across hackathons?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course I haven't.
No. It's just,
I was just about to say earlier, I make us an isosceles, no, not an isosceles, whatever triangle, certainly not an equilateral triangle. I haven't heard that. What is that?
So kind of going back to the small cross-functional teams, is the idea that you get teams together and you give them a short period of time to come up with something creative and innovative, often with technology. I know Spotify do it quite successfully.
The first time I saw that was on the film, The Social Network, about Facebook, where, again, at the early doors of Facebook, he had a hackathon, and it was like in the college dorm, and they were getting drunk, and he put like all these like developers, they had something to write, but again, he was putting them under loads of pressure, and just went from there. But
you get beers, you get pizza, you get
Why haven't you done that here?
Well, it's in the plan. It's in the plan. But yeah, we could get a client in and say, right, talk to us about a problem, and we're going to give the team 2 days, and they're just going to go at it and just try and create something to try and solve your problem. It might be a very early iteration, but
I love that idea. That's brilliant.
So that's something that we're looking at, and something that a lot of businesses do to kind of aid that innovation and R&D as well. We like that.
I think it works really well for the BI stuff that we've done, especially with data. There's loads of data, find some insights in that. And it's kind of like, here's some nuggets. We found this, and this. Did you realise that here's a massive hole that you've lost in terms of like a risk, and here's a huge opportunity. We found these trends. That's where I think the hackathons really work quite well. But you're right, from a process perspective, I think, because linking it back to some of the stuff that we're doing around automating process, the whole process mining stuff now that's around and able. So if you can put, I don't know, systems in place where we can actually map out and quantify bottlenecks. Once we've zoned in on a particular bottleneck, then we can figure out, okay, how do we streamline this and quantifiably say, what is this value to the business? How is it going to impact? And that then could, start a project, because ultimately, if it's viable and it can be done, there we go. There's budget, solve it, and off we go.
Yeah.
So.
This is Matt. Matt is a finance director, and this is Matt's team. Day after day, they trudge through endless stacks of paperwork, like mindless zombies. But luckily for Matt and his team, things are about to get a lot better. Since Spectro has digitized their documents, there's no need for physical copies and duplicates to clutter up the office. And with a fleet of Spectrobots to take care of the mundane, Matt's team have changed the game. Don't waste the potential they've got. Get them a robot with Spectrum. Tomorrow's workplace today.
Okay, so that was point number 2. Point number 3, extreme work choices will blur boundaries, businesses and buddies. Too many B's in there. So
Extreme work choices.
we're talking about networks, ecosystems of people, often in different countries. I guess it's broadening the horizons of who you're working with, rather than just the people sat in your office.
Yeah.
Going more kind of globalized. We're seeing that. Are you seeing that? So kind of touching on what we got into in the last pod around metaverse. Yeah, but that. So what am I saying? It'll be real-time translation. So you could be speaking to somebody in Bulgaria, but you'd have been real-time translation between them. And you could use this kind of idea of rating, giving people a rating score after you've used them. So it's like the gig economy. You could use a developer in Bulgaria for 2 weeks, give them a rating score, and then that builds an ecosystem of different people that you can kind of tap into as and when you need to.
I've seen it from 2 points there. And so one is, because we're obviously in software, there's a lot of resource in the Far East, like India and Philippines and that type of thing. So we have got suppliers and networks, and it's worked all right. Again, time zones been okay, but I've not really had too much of an issue. Okay, probably it's been on them to maybe do an early start or a late night type thing to coincide with our working day. But in terms of doing calls and Teams or Zoom calls, it's been not too bad. I mean, I did that webinar with the guy from UiPath that was in Singapore. I've done it before, where obviously our marketing resource John went off to Thailand, and we were jumping on Teams calls and things like that. And we've got people in, like I said, in the Philippines that we work with, that are NetSuite sort of partners. I've done others, especially in India. So as long as the time zone works, I think it's okay. It'll be interesting so we have a customer that does exactly that, the translation piece. And I think as technology gets better with that, then it'll be interesting to see. I mean, we've got some multinational companies that we look after where their head offices are in Paris and things like that, and they've talked to me about how painful it is when they go to visit head office and they've got their headphones in and they're trying to keep up with what's going on, and stuff like that is still. I suppose we're a little bit. What was the word? I don't want to say naive, but we're quite privileged that a lot of the world speaks English. So I think in that regard we're quite good. But the
idea of working with a global network of people, what do we think?
I like it. I've had experience of it recently, and I think technology is allowing us to bring the globe. Like we were saying in the last pod, but the globe, literally, like we could be sitting on one desk in the UK, in East Yorkshire, and the next person could be in Sydney, could be wherever, and actually you're working on the same project. And I think you were sort of intimating that actually you can, through the sort of rating system, you can find for want of a better description, go back to analog, the right jigsaw piece for that particular puzzle. Recently, I've worked on something with that, and it worked, unbelievably well.
I think you can play it to your advantages, like you say. So with certain software companies, depending on the time of day, you can have that sort of 24-hour support service as well. So if they've got offices in Sydney and that type of thing, they can have the round-the-clock sort of support service 24/7. So again, when we're closed, because again, there'll be certain food manufacturers or whoever that are a 24/7 operation that might need that out-of-hours service. But then also from a delivery of a program, a project, for example, we've got a customer that's in sort of branding and graphic design, and they've got that Chase the Sun sort of teams in different countries that they pick it up and drop it, and they get the project done in a short space of time.
That's ultra agile. That must be about 400 scrums just to deliver the one project and get it done in a few minutes.
Neil's just waiting for us to set up the Florida office.
We
go.
He did put his hand up to say he'd go and open it.
Florida.
Oh, you're going to go to Sydney first, right?
I'll have homes in them all. That's where I'm off.
I think going back to that skills piece I touched on earlier in terms of the amount of talent or the lack of available talent, if we like, in the UK at the minute, I think it's just going to push people to look globally.
And it will also help from an economic perspective as well. When in all walks of life, any project, be it building a skyscraper or delivering a software project or whatever, there's always cost considerations. And if you can actually confidently deliver something, and let's say you're using resource around the world,
different
it makes you competitive, but the quality's there and whatever, then you can't be bonkers not to do it. I would suggest, and like you said, and I was talking to a client just a couple of hours ago, and completely different thing, don't do anything to do with software apart from use ours, but they were saying that trying to source staff, I know we're having that experience, Steve, but trying to source, it was technicians, and when they find someone that they want to have a conversation with, it's like, actually, I want X to walk through the door, and it's like, wow, that's not necessarily what's within the, it's not like the Premier League. So, in their world, that doesn't necessarily, they need bodies on, on UK soil, but from our side of things and other businesses being able to, what's the term? Is it offshore it or nearshore it or whatever? I think that's going to be beneficial.
It's interesting. I remember when we moved to this office, Bridgehead, and like we were involved with sort of marketing Humber and the whole sort of this area. And you're right, some of the big players like Smith and Nephew and the others and Reckitt Benckiser attracting talent to Hull and up north. It was a big thing. Now, maybe they don't have to as much because geographically people aren't having necessarily to relocate. It could be that they can work remotely, work digitally. And I think definitely in the last 2 years, the world's just had to adapt that way. So it's definitely changed some people's opinions on that. So it'll be interesting to see.
I think that's the thing for me, it is the fact that why you'd never have wished what's happened in the last 2 years. Actually, it has forced and sort of pushed the fact that, through not by choice but by necessity, we had to do it like this, and it's proven that actually, it's worked. And we have
forced that paradigm shift. It's forced people to look at it from a different perspective, because there's people that I've spoken to previously that were regional salesmen that have worked at home. So I've spoken to a couple of our partners that we've got, and they've been working from home for 20 years or 15 years or whatever, and they're used to going on the road to see customers, and it didn't really make a difference then. But you're right, the more traditional roles that are historically in the office or on the shop floor type thing, that they've got that flexibility. And I was quite surprised up until last week. I was having a conversation and people are still working from home in certain functions, and for them it was actually they ran out of space. They didn't, and they'd closed certain offices, so it was a bit like, well, okay, so that they'd more or less made that definitive decision. Well, there isn't any space for you to come back to, so you're gonna have to continue to work from home.
And if they're working 30 miles down the road, then they could be working 3,000 miles down the road, couldn't they?
Well, when you think about it, and what we were saying, and what you were saying there, Neil, is as much as you look at some of our vendors. They're not based in London. They're not based in Manchester or Leeds or Birmingham. They're based on mainland Europe. They're in Germany. They're in Barcelona. They're wherever, and actually hasn't impacted us.
All right, we'll need to rattle through a bit. So you'll have to stop talking.
Can we?
Actually, and you will as well. It'll just be me for the next stuff.
Brilliant.
20 minutes.
Right, let's go.
No. Actually, so this is in our sweet spot. So smart machines will be our co-workers. Is the next one.
The robots are coming.
The robots are coming. Yeah. So I mean, and that's essentially what it says, that machines, and in the loosest sense of the word, will be working alongside humans to help them deliver their work.
There's a term that I hear loads in manufacturing. This cobots and robots and digital twins.
Sorry,
and
cobots.
Cobots, which is what he's talking about there, having something that assists the human.
Yeah.
It's happening. Logistics, manufacturing. So again, where a massive production line once had 200-300 people, you've got, 5 or 6 robots, and then you've got one operator. So you've got 5 people instead of 200 type thing. And it's all about efficiency and getting things out the door. But I think it'll...
It's more than that. It's more than... Sorry, I'm interrupting. I'm good at that. Yeah. It's more about... It's absolutely about efficiency, but it's also about accuracy.
Yes, I was going to say quality.
Oh, sorry. Should have shut up, shouldn't
I? It's another one, isn't it? But what we've always seen, and what I've seen for the last 10 years, is these companies have invested millions and millions on the shop floor to get their product out the door faster, but then their back office systems are just archaic, still paper everywhere, which is where we come in terms of, can we give them because ultimately that's kind of what we're doing. We're giving them a robot to assist in a mundane paper process, whether that be using the RPA sort of assisted bots where it's file go and it just runs a routine to do something, or whether it's a physical robot that's moving. You see it in like logistics with the warehousing, don't you? With Amazon, you've got little robots flying around moving pallets and stacking things on shelves and whatnot, which is phenomenal to see. But I think that's definitely going to increase.
Kind of talk about everybody having their own virtual assistant, their own machine that's will work alongside them and just take away 50, 60, 70% of the work that you can give away to a machine.
And it's been, sorry, John, it's been growing, hasn't it? We've had the last 10 years with like Siri in our pockets and things like that, where we're at home. You talk about this generation that have grown up. My son just shouts to Alexa and tells her to play some music and stuff like that. So they're used to working with robots already. They're growing up with assistants. Turn the lights on, play the music. So it won't be any different for them. And it'll be interesting to see how they get on at school and university, because I'll be asking them for the. Do you know what I mean? Alexa, tell me the answer to this. And but again, like, why memorize it when you can ask? I don't know. I've read both sides of the story, because again, your brain's a muscle, so if you don't use it, you lose it scenario. So memory, retaining information, if it's relative and key, not pub quizzes like Rob, but but no, I think it's that one's key. I think it's going to accelerate. I do think I think it'll probably happen quicker than 10 years. I think it probably happen in the next 5 years, to the extent of, again, the winners will be the ones that adopt it faster. And then the rest will just have to catch up.
I think there's also an element of, we've touched on it a couple of times already, is the sourcing expertise.
Yep.
If you can potentially upskill someone that obviously has the capability, but upskill someone that's already has a background and a knowledge of your business, and you can take away the bit that's stopping them having that freedom to do it by introducing, automation or bots or whatever, then actually that's going to be a partial, if not quite a large solution to the shortage in skill sets and things like that for me.
No, I agree.
I think that's
the key one that I see, again, that probably it's the one that I get quite frustrated with, but when it's done well, it's really good, is like the customer care side of things. So if you've got, I don't know, a package, or if you've got something delivered and it's broken, or you've got to return something, or even something, I don't know, there might be something wrong at the bank or whatever. So you log a thing now, and it's a chatbot, and it tries to field your questions, and then it tries to answer your questions for you, and then if need be, it'll push you off to a particular advisor to the right department. Now, when that works well, it's amazing.
Unbelievable.
When it's not, it's the most frustrating thing in the world. And I think that's going to have to get a lot better. Obviously, we know that the main companies that do it really well. I mean, the Monzo banks are flying because of it. It's really good. Amazon's flying because they've got it nailed. But the other legacy companies are just, falling by the wayside. But they're going to have to invest even more to catch up. And that's where a good example of a bot assisting the human, because if they can field it to a point and they've got the information, so by the time I speak to someone, I know why, I know who it is, and I can help them in a quicker, because ultimately
everybody wins.
We don't want to be sat on the phone for 20-30 minutes in a bloody queue on hold and thinking, bloody hell, I've got more stuff to do than that. But then we want our pain solving. I mean, the classic one that I had the other day, so someone, I think it was either the wife or the cleaner, broke our Shark vacuum cleaner.
The cleaner,
yeah. I didn't want to drop that in there, but I did anyway. So.
But try hard not to.
So, no, I didn't. I try to blame the wife.
What's the gardener doing? Anyway.
But I rang them on, I think, like warranty, for example. So I read it, got a 5-year warranty. I'm thinking, sorry, I'll ring them. It was like 5:30 on a Sunday evening. I explained the problem. They said, it'll be with you within 3 days. Literally, less than 12 hours later, by 10 o'clock the next morning, DPD had dropped off a brand new part. And I'm thinking, that's amazing service. Like, the fact that you're open on a Sunday and the fact that you delivered it within, 6-7 hours.
You had to wait a week for the engineer to come and fit it.
Well, yeah.
It was plug and play. And I was like, what do you do with this?
To get the butler to do it.
Yeah.
Right, we'll move on.
Go on.
So, next one. We will work for purpose and passion, not just for money. Now, I know
100%.
Neil will say no to that, but no, go on. What do we think?
I
So
agree. I 100% agree with that.
people changing why they go to work.
The interesting thing there is the whole great resignation thing, because people are sort of thinking, well, yeah, what's the point? I'd rather work closer to home. I don't need to commute anymore. I remember there was a story once when, again, I went travelling. I was in New Zealand, and the guy leading the kayak expedition, so we went kayaking in Milford Sound to see the dolphins, and he was a multimillionaire, lost it all, but then thought, sod it, there's more to life. He got that stressed out, like broken marriage, didn't see his kids, all that type of thing, typical sort of. And then he thought, well, hang on, this is my office. And he was kayaking in this stunning location, taking people on kayak trips. There will be people like that have been in the rat race in London, whatever, commuting, thinking, yeah, there's more to life. I 100% agree with that. Now, they're going to... Again, they'll have to downsize in terms of their aspirations. If they've got £1 million house and they can't afford the mortgage, then they're going to have to sell it or whatever. But to do that type of lifestyle, but I do believe that'll be a bigger motivation.
I think. Sorry, jumping in. I think that's going to be a bigger motivation / trend with the next generation. Because not wishing to bring it down, but the next 5-10 years are going to be torrid, generally. So while I'd love the thing, and to be fair, we can all probably say we work with purpose and passion, but still want the reward.
Yeah.
I think the next 5-10 years, from an economic perspective, are going to be pretty tough. So you still need to dig in and make sure you're being, you're getting rewarded and trying to get as much passion out of it as you can. But I think once everything starts settling down, maybe a decade is too long, but once things start settling down, which is, I go back to the next generation, our children, they may have, it's going to be so different, isn't it?
But ultimately, it comes back to, again, what we've been talking about, like the robots and cobots are going to free people up from doing the mundane stuff. So instead of sat there thinking, why am I doing this job? It's just for the money. If they could combine two, they could do a job that gives them purpose and meaning, rewards them financially to the level of value that they're creating, and they're having the mundane stuff taken care of by a bot of some sort, then everybody's win-win. The mental health of that individual, they're living a more rewarding life, they feel as though they're giving more to value to the community and the wider sort of space, and everybody's happy. That's the holy grail, I guess.
It is, and actually... It's a really interesting point you make there, because the more directors that I'm talking to, FDs, ops directors, whatever, managing directors, it's starting to, for me, I don't know if either of you are seeing it, seep in that's actually quite important, is the employees, not enjoyment as in, let's have a laugh, but actually satisfaction is probably the right word in their role. I want them to have more satisfaction in what they're doing. So when we talk about bots, cobots, and mundane tasks, it's actually, do you know what? I don't really want them doing it, because I look out my office window and they look really miserable. I don't want that. I want them to enjoy coming in.
Yeah.
And
I think it's also the talent thing again, isn't it? That we've touched on. It's not, people don't just want a big paycheck. Maybe they do want that, but they also want to enjoy work. They want to have a good work-life balance, and as an employer, if you want to keep hold of your staff, you need to be able to offer that full package.
And on that, Steve, I remember talking to a friend, and they are a client of ours, and he was saying, so he's a finance director. He was actually saying that I've got I've got a grad out of university, qualified in accountancy, and at the moment they're processing in purchase invoices. And he went, that isn't probably what they did accountancy for. That isn't what I want them to do. But at the moment, I need them to do it because that's where we're at. And actually, I keep referring back to our kids, but they're not going to have the patience to walk in and go, do you know what, I'm prepared. Where we, apprenticeships or whatever it was, it's kind of like, all right, that's part of it. in 5, 10, 15 years time, it's like I've qualified in this. I've got a lot of knowledge in this. I want to crack on now. I just want to do what I started, and it goes back to the skill sets and things like that. I think in time we'll have people and that will just want to get on with it and not necessarily. And let's be fair, they won't have the need to, because we have the solutions. They're there.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me. It's a good segue into the last point, actually. So, the sixth point on the list is work-life challenges will reveal a dark side. And if I summarise it, it's basically, I think, because of how accessible work is, we can all look at our mobiles at 10 o'clock at night. They Gartner talk about the fact that people will be working around the clock, or there's a risk that they'll be working round the clock, and that they fizzle out. And they even talk about the fact that maybe actually technology will be used to counter that. So using technology to actually sense when people are working too much, using biorhythms and nutritional requirements and that sort of thing, and then almost flag to the employer and the employee that they need to stop, slow down, change working patterns.
I think that works.
Are we seeing that?
I think, yes, it works both ways. I think, and I think it comes down to the individual and depends on how they're wired, because you'll get some people that are, just on it all the time, that quit, that they're mildly ADHD, sort of just hyperactive and just want to channel all the energy into work and just non-stop 7 days a week. And to a certain degree, you need those type of Elon Musk type characters that just don't stop and run multiple businesses. But then if you're looking at it from an employee perspective, you'll have the ones that will try and, toss it off a little bit and just kind of, try and kick back and do the minimum. And you're right there with the health tech side of things, because you've got the mental health thing that people talk about. You talked about trying to be rewarding and on purpose and passionate about stuff. So hopefully if you're in the right job and you're passionate about what you do and you're good at what you do and you're trying to add value, then you should, or the tech will allow people to sort of balance that out. There is a temptation if the senior leaders are on at people that sort of say, we have to hit this target, we've got to do this, we've got to do the other. If you're still cranking and that screw, they will break. Ultimately, unless you get that. If you're in a very fast-paced scaling company that's very high pressure, and then unless you have the right systems and automation in place to enable that scale, humans will suffer otherwise.
You've gone to a hole.
Definitely.
I've seen some countries have banned things like email after a certain time, and is that
really?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Can you check that for me?
There's quite a few, in terms of
rubbish.
Japan or Sweden and things like that, where
because
it goes back
people
to that
not allowed to email after 7 o'clock at night. And
it goes back to that sort of 4-day work week and things like that. Trying to get that balance and how do we make sure that we've got that duty of care, that the individual's rested enough to go again and be 100% focused. And they talk about that deep work, making sure that they're focused on a block of time, where it be 2 hours, 4 hours, and they get the actual work done. Or are they just, it's that quantity versus quality sort of thing. Are they at work for 10 hours, but what's
attendeeism?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing, because actually I was off last week, and for half the week I was in a place where there was no Wi-Fi. The cottage I was staying at had no Wi-Fi, and we had no mobile signal.
Oh, wow.
And I promise you,
Old school.
I was lost.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
In a good way or a bad way?
Well,
Lost
that's a good question, because I would say both. In a good way, because actually I had to shut down and I had to just release, the fact that I couldn't stay in touch. But in a bad way, because there was a few things going on that I wanted to still be, kept abreast of, and I couldn't. And it goes back. This one could actually be a whole pod for me, because you look at technology, and so a lot of the things you were saying, Neil, is very much actually by introducing some of the things that we do, but lots of technologies are able to do. I think down the line, potentially it has the opportunity for people to dip in and dip out. I use that term quite loosely, but it's like quality over quantity. I always knew I was going to get that.
Yeah.
But being able to go, do you know what? I can dip in. Like
I have to consciously switch off because I'm forever checking phones, emails, notifications. 20
buy sell, yeah.
Yeah, literally. Because I've got bloody 2 phones. I'm on it all the time. But the when I went away last week for my wife's birthday, I was having to stop myself, and I didn't. Ultimately, I'm still answering emails and I'm still doing calls. And what you got there? But you've put me off my train of thought there. You see that? Squirrel. What? but ultimately, yeah. In terms of switching off and being present, I tell you the one that hit me big. Was I took my daughter that's 6 to gymnastics, and there's a viewing gallery, and she's obviously doing her gymnastics, and she called me out and she said, "Daddy, you're always on your phone." I was like, yeah, okay. And then to the point where she even went, "Well, I want Mummy to take me this week because you're always on your phone and you're never watching me." I'm thinking, just hit me. I'm just like, all right, I'll have to leave the phone in the car type thing and actually be present and be a bit more, parenting. What's that about? But
that's a good point. We've all been there, haven't we?
Yeah, and it is about actually potentially down the line having, ironically, technology to stop you using technology to actually go, do you know what? For your health or for the good of your family unit, actually you can't have access for 2 hours or whatever. And actually, once I got over
you can do that with the kids, can't we? With the Amazon thing, you can turn it off and say screen time's only for that amount. I'm have to do it for myself.
Yeah.
It's difficult to have that conversation with the kids. I know in 5-10 years' time, my kids are going to be on the PlayStation or whatever, and I'm going to want to get them off it, and they're going to be able to say, "Well, you're always on your phone."
Steve, you need to wake up to what's going on in the world. Yeah. It's not just going to be the PlayStation. It's going to be the PlayStation, the phone, the iPad. It's going to be 5 different things, and you're going to have to somehow make all of them go away.
We're setting a bad example. I think we need to change that.
Under Prospect's proposal, companies with 50 or more employees would be required to negotiate with staff and unions annually on a plan for managing after-hours contact, though implementation would be left up to each employer. A similar law took effect in France in 2017 to much global fanfare. I don't know where we all were. Italy and Spain followed suit. Wow.
Yeah, I thought I read about it in France.
The siesta's live and kicking, and French don't like to work anyway, do they? But
the pandemic has only accelerated this interest in a right to disconnect. In February, the European Parliament called for it to be recognised as fundamental across the EU. That's why we came out of it, is it? Pointing to the toll of an always-on culture on work-life balance. Slovakia introduced a law this year. In April, Ireland introduced a code of practice requiring not only proactive engagement on the issue, but reviews, training and equity checks. In Canada, the government is exploring a similar policy. Dutch politicians are waiting to debate the subject.
So we'll end on a quick yes or no. Should we in the UK introduce a policy of no work emails after 7 o'clock at night? Neil first.
Yes.
One word, yes.
Wow. Because I'm going to say no, and I would have thought we would have both said the opposite.
Interesting.
What about you?
I don't need to answer. I'm the host. I'm going to say yes. I'm with you. I think I've just convinced myself in the last 10 minutes from having this conversation.
Thing is, you don't get people like me emailing you late at night and having to bombard you, or people pestering you to sign off their holiday requests.
Well, that's the
and
thing,
things
isn't
like
it?
that.
If it was a one-liner, which we're not either of us are very good at, if it's a one-liner, you probably wouldn't mind. But when it's War and Peace, you probably
imagine if you're
not wait till tomorrow.
Managing a team of people, your inbox would be they're always at you.
Mainly from you.
Yeah, mainly me.
I think we'll leave it there.
Like it.
Delete.
Pub time.
Go on then. If you're buying, I'm going to check it.